Welcome to Financial Issues with Shana, where we join reality with truth, helping you to make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now, here's your host, Shana.
Good Wednesday morning. It is May 29th, 2024, and we're so glad that you joined us at Financial Issues today. We're a stewardship ministry helping you make the most of your money, teaching you to defund darkness in the way that you invest, to screen out companies who are using shareholder dollars to promote ungodly agendas like those of abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda, human rights violations, and so many things more. We also encourage you to be a funder of the light. It costs money to do evil things in the world, and it also costs money to do good in the world. So we want to encourage you to be a joyful and generous giver, to be obedient with the resources that the Lord has trusted you to manage. Our stewardship verse today comes from Leviticus 25 and 36. Take no interest from him or profit, but fear your God, that your brother may live beside you. Stay tuned. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into that and talk about some of the uses of debit and credit and talk about that interest. So make sure that you stay tuned for that later in the show. Also, we have Joel Noble coming on with Samaritan Ministries to share with you more about how you can be a good steward of your health care and your health care dollars and your health care freedoms. So you're not going to want to miss that. Stay tuned for that. Well, the markets are all in positive territory year to date. Since January, the NASDAQ is up over 11%. The S&P is up over 11% as well, and the Dow is up 3.6%. So Dow being a much narrower indice, it only contains 30 stocks. It doesn't contain some of the stocks that have seen the most price appreciation year to date. Now, where do we stand? Are we in a bull market or are we in a bear market? Well, we're in a bull market. So a bull market is just when the market goes up 20% or more since its lowest point. Well, the lowest point for all three stock indices, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ, came toward the end of October last year, October of 2023. Since then, all three stock indices are in bull territory. So the Dow just crossed over recently. The Dow's up over 20% now since the low. The S&P is up close to 30%, and the NASDAQ is up somewhere close to 25% since its lows. So what do we think? What do we think? Is the market going to continue to go up? You know, if the market's in had a bull market, is it now time for the markets to pull back? Well, interestingly enough, Citigroup puts out a market sentiment tracker, and this is what they say about where it has been and where it's going. I think we've got a little chart to put up on the screen there. So as you can see, we are in the euphoric zone. So if you see the bottom at the green there, I'll do my best to explain this verbally just in case you're not watching. But the bottom there, you'll see a green color. That is kind of the panic zone. That's when consumers are really kind of in panic mode, selling out of things, moving to cash. The blue is the euphoric zone when people are feeling very greedy about the markets, feeling that, you know, the sky is blue, the sky's the limit, things are going to continue going up. And then the black line there is kind of where we are. So we can see there back in, interestingly enough, back in October when we saw the markets at its bottom, we can say that now, looking back, not many people were feeling very euphoric. And in fact, it was getting close to panic mode. So if you followed your gut and were panicked and got out, you would have missed, as you can see, more than 20% growth in the markets. So what does that mean going forward? Well, according to Citigroup, they say that, quote, historically, a reading below panic supports a better than 95% likelihood that stock prices will be higher 1 year later, while euphoria levels generate a better than 80% probability of stocks being lower 1 year later. So what does that mean? Does that mean that, that we should go against the grain and try to do the opposite of what most consumers feel like the market is going to do, or where it's going to be a year later? Well, I always think it's a bad idea to try to time the market, because you can see, even though there's a 95% likelihood when we're in panic zone that stocks will be higher a year later, there's still a 5% probability that it won't. And same thing on the flip side. I think the thing to focus on longer term is that whenever you have a long-term strategy, the market is higher 70% of the time. So if you're looking at any given year, sure, you may try to time the market now, and you may get out, you may avoid a little bit of a downturn, but now you've got a bigger problem. When do you get back in? And what this shows us is that typically when we are in panic mode, people are looking for safe havens. They're looking for CDs. And a lot of times when people get out, they don't get back in. So if you do get out, you're going to have to be right twice about when to go back in. And, if you're looking for us to give you that cue, you're probably not going to get it from us. We take a long-term approach. We know that that time is on our side, and when you stay in the market, you're better off longer term. And then you don't have that problem about trying to get out and get back in, because I think people just get exasperated whenever they try to do that. They're trying to time the market getting out, trying to time the market getting in, and it just typically backfires so many times. So we just encourage you to stay put. It doesn't hurt to keep a little bit of powder dry. In fact, if you're following our strategy, you will keep a little bit of powder dry, in case the market does give us some opportunities going forward. And the flip side of that, of all of this, is that inflation has been historically high. And inflation is also expected by consumers to stay higher from a historical perspective. So what is the antidote for inflation? The antidote for inflation is equity investing, because equities tend to benefit from inflation. They increase their prices to keep up with inflation. So that's the real way that you'll stay ahead. Well, Seth, I think we have maybe some questions to get to here.
I think so, Shana. I was loving your teaching there. That was awesome. I was getting wrapped up into it. We have Andy asking a good question here, 48 years old. He says, regarding your financial model for my age group, you have a percentage allocation for CDs. Now, is this intended for investment in the individual CDs via ladder, or can this be through a fund? And he mentions one there. What's your intended investment for the CDs? Thank you and your team's ministry to the Lord. What do you think, Shana? How can we help Andy?
Yeah, so the fund that he mentions there is a money market fund, and it does have a pretty decent yield. It's very comparable to what you can get in CDs. I think the cash portion of your asset allocation model would be okay in that fund, but for the fixed income portion, we do give some guidance there about how you should build that out. But I do like the CD ladder, because although the Fed's estimated target date for rate increases keeps getting pushed back a little bit, when they do start to decrease the interest rates, that means CD rates are going to follow in short order. So the way to kind of lock in that higher rate is to build a CD ladder for your fixed income portion.
Awesome. Quick one here, Shana, from Kim, asking, would E48 be a good replacement for E47? If not, would you suggest a good replacement for E47? She's in the 55 to 65 model, wondering if she should hold energy stocks in her Roth account or in a non-qualified individual brokerage. What do you think?
Well, I don't think I have time to address both, but I'll address the first one. Yep. I would say that if growth is your goal, then E48 is probably good for you. If you're looking for something to replace the income that you were getting on E47, E83 is probably better for income investors. Well, folks, we're going to take a break here at Financial Issues, and then we're going to come back. Stay tuned. We're going to hear from Joel Noble with Samaritan Ministries about why you should consider health sharing ministries as a healthcare alternative. Learn more about our ministry at Financial Issues.
Throughout the month of May, FISM is partnering with Preborn to fund the light by providing 100 ultrasound machines to pro-life centers around the country. Now, how can you contribute? Well, for as little as $28, you can provide an ultrasound scan to an abortion-minded woman in crisis. And when that woman hears the heartbeat of her baby, she will choose life. Get this, 90% of the time. It's remarkable. And guess what? With the help of a donor match, for every 200 scans donated, that's for a net value of $5,600, Preborn Ministries will be gifted an ultrasound machine to place at a clinic in need. Each machine has the potential to impact hundreds of thousands of mothers' choices. Preborn also offers additional support to mothers in need and presents the gospel to every mother who comes into their clinics, knowing that salvation is the greatest gift that can be given to a mother and her child. So go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us today. We're so glad that you're here. As a stewardship ministry, we teach you how to be a good steward with everything that the Lord has trusted you with. And that extends not only to money, but it also extends to what we spend our money on. And we also encourage you to be a good steward of your health care. So that's something that we talk about a good bit here at Financial Issues, and we're so blessed to have a partner like Samaritan Ministries. Samaritan Ministries offers an alternative to traditional health insurance. It is the solution that we use here at our ministry for health insurance. We don't use traditional health insurance. We use health sharing with Samaritan Ministries for the employees here at the ministry because we believe in it so much. And we hope that you will learn more about it. And to help you do that, we have the Public Policy Director at Samaritan Ministries, Joel Noble, with us here today. Joel, welcome. Thanks for being here with us.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, Joel, tell us, what news do you have to report from the public policy front? How is Samaritan helping keep our health freedoms intact?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we work on quite a bit is what we call safe harbor laws, and that is where we clarify within a state code that we're actually not insurance. And it's a proactive measure that helps us not have to be bound by the same laws as insurance. Periodically, there would be well-meaning insurance commissioners that would try to apply insurance laws to us. And if we did, in a lot of ways, it would destroy the ministerial nature of what we do. So we've now have 33 states that explicitly say in their insurance code that we're not insurance. So Tennessee and West Virginia were 32 and 33. Just a few months ago. So that's a great blessing to be able to keep extending that. Other than that, we've had, unfortunately, kind of a bad reporting scheme in Colorado for the last couple of years. And we decided, not just us, but a number of the ministries, now that they finalized that rule, that it was unconstitutional. And so our trade association filed a lawsuit last week. So that's a way that your listeners can be praying that that can be resolved quickly and in our favor, because it's in a lot of ways violating our religious liberties with what they're doing there in the state of Colorado.
Tell us a little bit more about that. What is the bad reporting that's been going on?
So it's a lot of questions about the ministries, which in itself is not bad. But some of those questions, excuse me, like what third-party vendors you use could open itself up to in this cancel culture. And it could also affect the vendors that, we would use. A lot of them would not want, contractually to have that information shared. Probably the most egregious is they ask how much is asked to be shared, which is, a good question, and then how much is actually shared. But what they ask is how much comes in pre-discounts. So numbers of bills, even in insurance, come in and then they get reduced before they're shared. So what, unfortunately, the state does and the media does is they took their report and then showed that the ministries were only sharing about 57%, which is absolutely untrue. Because if you get $1,000 bill from the hospital and you call them up and say, hey, if I pay this in 30 or 60 days, will you discount that? Most providers will, and even bigger discounts than that. So you don't actually owe $1,000. You only owe like $800 or maybe $700. And that's what we're sharing among the members because that's the help that you need. But if you took that pre-discounted amount and compared it to what was actually shared, you get a skewed number. We tried to share that with them, but they were undeterred. And so, unfortunately, the way that they're portraying the data they collect is disingenuous. And once the rule was finalized, we, decided, hey, this is not, good, and so we're going to take a stand.
Yeah. That brings up another really interesting point is that, I think that a lot of healthcare providers have become accustomed to what they can get out of traditional insurers. And then we have, this really high burden of uninsured people in the system. And, these emergency healthcare providers and all of it, they have to, treat people. They have to not deny care to somebody who's really in need of it. So that puts a lot of pressure on the system. And so that's a great illustration that you said, you get these bills and then whenever it's just sad that you have to go back and you have to negotiate and say, okay, what will you really take? Why can't we just, have the prices up front? Because they don't want to leave any money on the table if an insurance company is going to pay a certain amount for a procedure or a treatment. They're going to try to charge as much as they can for it. And, that leads right into the high cost of healthcare. About half of U.S. adults say that it's difficult to afford healthcare costs, and 1 in 4 say that they or a family member in their household had problems paying for healthcare in the last 12 months. What do you make of this?
Yeah, as it keeps going up, I think one of the other big challenges is folks go and buy insurance and they try to find that sticker price that works for them as a monthly premium. And then what they find is often when they go to use it, their deductible is so high that it's actually unusable. So they think they've gotten something that's going to work for them because the monthly price, their monthly premium works for them. And then their deductible is so high that they're never able to meet that. And it's essentially useless. And that's a big part of it. And you're unfortunately in insurance most of the time not able to shop around. Either your employer or the government, if you got it through the marketplace, is telling you these are the providers you need to see. And so you're locked in to a price, and that also affects your, out of pocket, because if you have to pay a portion of that up front, that is unaffordable also.
Sounds very restrictive. I haven't been on traditional insurance for a really long time, but I do remember a time that I was, and you have to call a lot of times and get permission to have certain procedures. And, you're really at the mercy of what they will pay for when it comes to prescriptions and different things like that. So, it's a known fact that government is very inefficient at, deploying resources. And I would say the same thing is true for the big insurance companies. It's all about making a profit and those kind of things. So what would you say to the people who, and as much as as people complain, have you ever heard anybody say how wonderful their health insurance is, especially if they're in the marketplace, or you hear the things like you just mentioned, I pay so much for it and I can't ever use it for anything. Or if I try to, it ends up costing me a whole lot more money. But still people are a little bit afraid to jump off of the traditional insurance bandwagon and into health sharing. What would you say to encourage people to get them to find out more?
Yeah, I would say, you're not alone. We live in an insurance-minded, world: car insurance, renters insurance, homeowners insurance, health insurance. It's kind of the norm. So don't feel bad if you're a little bit, worried about that. I mean, it's been ingrained in us. But then after that, I would point to, we've been operating now. We're going to celebrate our 30th year, and our members have been faithful to help each other. I know it's a step of faith, but it's one that's worth it. I came off of, my parents' insurance, Fortune 500 company, and it was a step in faith. And, I stepped out there and saw how it works, and, have had, some major health needs. My son, a few months ago went through an ACL surgery, and, nearly, 60,000 plus now that we're looking at as those bills keep coming in. Wow. And the members have been faithful month after month to take care of that. And never once, did I ever really worry that, this was not going to be, taken care of by the other members. And again, it's a step of faith, but once you do it and see how it works, we have great retention rate in our members. And I think that's because once they experience a need, they think this is great. And it's not just the bills being shared, it's the community, and knowing that someone else is praying for you.
Great stuff. Well, Joel, I like health savings accounts, or HSAs. I think those provide a good resource for people to be able to put money away to provide for, either pay for some of their healthcare needs in a tax-free kind of way, or, grow that money for their future needs. But HSAs typically are interpreted to not be health sharing plans, are not traditionally qualify somebody to have an HSA. I know that you've been working on this for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about the struggle there?
Yeah. So health savings accounts, you need a high deductible health plan enabled to fund those. And Healthcare Sharing Ministries would not qualify as a high deductible health plan. So currently, you're not able to establish and fund your HSA with just Healthcare Sharing Ministries. We've been working on it for a number of years. I do sometimes tell our members when they ask, it took about 13 years for HSAs to get established originally within Congress. So it was a long haul to even get what we now know as HSAs. We've passed the 13-year mark as us working on it, but we're hopefully after the election, depending on what Congress and the presidency looks like, we would hope to get language in a larger healthcare type bill to extend that. And we're also looking at under 213D, that's where they put what medical deductions are, which would be another thing that would be very helpful if there was a third category besides just health insurance premiums and healthcare costs. If you could, if you itemize, deduct your healthcare sharing ministry shares. I will say, if you live in Montana, you got a little bit of an opportunity. Montana has medical savings accounts, HSAs, and you can use your dollars in your MSA in Montana for healthcare sharing ministry expenses.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Well, folks, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for being with us today, Joel. We certainly appreciate all of the hard work that you do over there at Samaritan Ministries. Folks, go to financialissues.org to find out.
I started investing close to 30 years ago now. All that time, I had never heard anyone talk about setting up your portfolio in a way that glorifies God. When I first heard about it, I was listening to the radio, a show called Financial Issues. They were teaching people how to honor God with their money. I became a partner with Financial Issues, and it's been one of the best decisions I've made. Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.
You know, folks, the bond between a mother and her child during pregnancy and childbirth lays the foundation for a lifelong connection characterized by love, nurturing, and mutual support. And we're asking you to help us create that bond between an abortion-minded mother and her child by giving life through Preborn, giving that gift of life. During the month of May, help us place 100 ultrasound machines that will save babies over and over and over again. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
We're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
The miracle of carrying a child creates a unique bond between a mother and her unborn baby. She feels the baby's movements and responds to their needs even before birth. Help create that bond between an abortion-minded mother and her unborn child by giving the gift of life through Preborn. During the month of May, you can bless your mom for Mother's Day by giving to Preborn on your mother's behalf. For $28, you can sponsor an ultrasound scan that will enable an abortion-minded woman to hear the heartbeat of her baby. 90% of the time, that sound will change a woman's mind and cause her to keep their baby. Give the gift of life to the woman that gave you life by sponsoring an ultrasound. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM. You can help an abortion-minded mother receive discipleship, encouragement, and the strength needed to have her baby.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Well, thanks for sticking with us here on Financial Issues, folks. Hope you enjoyed that interview there with Joel Noble. Let's take a look real quickly at what the markets did here yesterday. They began the shortened week kind of mixed out of the gate. The recently embattled Dow Jones, which had hit its 40,000-point benchmark, was in the negative. The S&P hung right around the flat line, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ was bolstered a bit by the ongoing success of NVIDIA. And that's how the markets ended. On Tuesday's closing bell, the Dow was down about 0.5%, the S&P just above the flat line, and the NASDAQ was up 0.6%. The pre-markets were negative, and that's where they've opened this morning. The Dow's down a full percentage point. The S&P 500 is down about 0.4%, and the NASDAQ is down about 0.75%. So that's what we're looking at right now in the markets. Hey, folks, got a special treat for you here today. We've got a live ag update with our dear friend Craig Haugaard, my dear friend, someone whose brilliance far exceeds mine and many others. Craig, great to have you on again, brother.
Well, it's great to be here and great to be alive.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Live was the key word in that introduction, I think. So
yeah, yeah. Yes. Well, I folks, we always talk about just how the brilliance of the show, I mean, it skyrockets about tenfold, Craig, when you come on. So I'm always a joy.
It's a testament to God's grace, isn't it? You get two fairly ignorant people together and they can make something beautiful.
I know, man. Boy, it really is true. Really is true. Well, let's get it started here, brother. Some things that are happening in the agricultural world that we need to be aware of today. I'd love to kick it off with these rising bird flu cases. What in the world is going on here? I think the last time we talked, Craig, you had told us that there was one human infection in the United States. This was probably a month or two ago when we had last talked. What do we need to know now? How has this changed since then?
Right, and that was the case. It was a gentleman who worked on a dairy in Texas. I think it was Thursday of last week. Another case popped up where it spread to humans, and that was in a dairy in Michigan. So. Right now, from a dairy perspective, it's been confirmed in 63 different herds across 9 different states. So it appears to be spreading. It's not got into the Canadian system yet, but I think as we see that spring migration go on, we'll probably see it show up in Canada as well. Now, the CDC is monitoring milk and just to make sure it's supposedly safe, I guess. And it's kind of interesting there that they went in and pulled milk samples and found it in just a little over 20% of the milk that they pulled. They found evidence of the virus there. I think it was 297 samples they collected at retail stores in 17 different states. Now, what they're maintaining, and I haven't seen anything to think this isn't true, is that the pasteurization process is killing that virus, but they can still find traces of it in the milk when they run the tests. So I assume it's a non-viable virus or traces of it they're finding in the milk. But that's going to be an ongoing story. And then
sure.
Just today, I believe another one popped up where I first became aware of it here about half hour ago, and that's a large egg-laying flock in Iowa. And you remember a couple of years ago when the price of your omelet went skyrocketing through the roof there, Seth.
Yep.
And it looks like that could be the case again. Now, this flock in Iowa is a little over 4.2 million birds were impacted by the outbreak in this one flock. And it looks like all 4.2 million of those are going to have to be put down. And so that's the biggest outbreak we've seen since back in 2020. There was another large flock of about 5 million that had to be put down at that point. But it's certainly out there. It's spreading, and it's going to kind of cause some havoc. If you think about taking 4.2 million birds out of the laying pool, so to speak, impact on prices of eggs. It's something we could see impacted simply by removing this one flock, I think. So. Going forward, that's going to continue to be a high priority, I think, for the disease control folks, but also is going to have an impact on people throughout the U.S. and cost of food and that type of thing.
Yeah. Craig, we got a couple questions that just came in on our chat from a few folks watching, actually similar to what we were just talking about here. This first one's from Claude, kind of wondering how safe is the food coming in from overseas? We just mentioned the bird flu possibly impacting food, but how safe is food coming in from overseas?
I think it's as safe as our inspection coming across the border.
Right.
So that I really don't know how to answer that, I guess. Now, I do know that there has been some huge fraudulent activity at times. And the stuff I'm really aware of is centered mainly around organic foods. Organic grains, for example, in the United States are grown under extremely strict rules and monitored heavily. But we had a case here a couple of years ago where some folks in Russia were selling quote-unquote organic grain into the United States and then just raising it as regular grain and throwing it on a ship and hoping no one would notice.
Yeah.
And that finally got caught in the testing system. But certainly agriculture controls are not as firm in other nations, and they will try and slip stuff through on you So again, it comes back to, I think, kind of our testing as it enters the country. And, I assume it's probably as good as it is in our meat processing plants if we're looking mainly at meat, because I think that's probably where the bigger dangers are. But there's definitely some holes in it and some things that probably could be fixed. But I guess my assumption in what I've traded internationally is that they're probably not the most honest and honorable people that I've ever dealt with, and just really need to be aware of that going into it and keep your eyes open.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig, speaking of meat, got one more question here that just came in from Jason in Florida, wondering, are we running out of chickens and pigs?
Are we running out of chickens and pigs?
Yeah. Perhaps as a country?
Well, the numbers are down. The nice thing about chickens is they can reproduce very, very quickly.
Yeah.
In fact, it's really interesting from the time a baby chick hatches out, and let's just say it's Purdue Farms, Purdue Chicken, which they do a fantastic job of raising chickens. They're just top notch, and the company that I've had a lot of experience with. But from the time that egg hatches to the time that it goes through the growing barn and is in the processing plant is 38 days. In fact, when that egg hatches, they've already set a date and a time slot on a specific day for that bird to be processed. So when you think about a shortage of chickens, I'm not super concerned about that because we can ramp that up pretty quickly, and in 38 days we can have a finished product to market. Hogs take a little bit more time, and certainly with what's going on with hog prices, I think there's not a great incentive right now. The finances aren't real good on swine, and so you'll see numbers cut back. But again, the gestation period on hogs is short enough that if the market responds and the prices tell us that we need more of them, I think those numbers can come back pretty rapidly as well.
Good stuff there, Craig. Switching gears a little bit here to what's going on perhaps overseas, and we're running out of time here, so I want to make sure that we get this in. If we have time, we'll hit some of our other topics here. But what's the latest news from the Panama Canal? I know we've been looking at those water levels going down a little bit. It's making for an interesting time crossing through there. What's been going on down there?
That's a good news story. We're seeing the rains. So there's a real seasonality to rain down there, but the rainy season is starting to show up. And we're actually seeing the numbers of vessels going through the canal increase. It maybe doesn't sound real huge, but like the old Panamax locks had been down to 27 ships per day allowed. Here just as recently as a couple of weeks ago, that's now up to 31. We're seeing the new lock system increase as well. I think for the first time in about a year, we're going to be getting back to about 40 ships a day between the two of them, which was kind of the pre-drought levels. So right now, that's a real good news story, and we're starting to see that freight move like it should.
Yep. Craig, in a world full of chaos, it's nice to hear a shred of good news every once in a while. That's good stuff.
It's nice to end on kind of a high note.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely, man.
It's easy to be gloom and doom, but there's good stuff out there.
For sure. Craig, this is one question I just wanted to ask you on a personal thing. How can our listeners be praying for you? I know you have some health things coming up. How can we be keeping you in our prayers?
I'm going to be, it's been a rough year. Just it feels like I've been kind of feeling cruddy more than I felt good. I'm having surgery on June 4th, and just pray that the surgery goes well, that it addresses the underlying issue, and I can be back with the listeners here shortly, hopefully.
Yep, absolutely. Craig, we appreciate you so much, brother. I appreciate our friendship so much, and I'm looking forward to the next time that we do it. Folks, make sure to be praying for Craig as he has that surgery next week, and make sure to listen to our Ag Report every single day on financial issues right around 9:40 Eastern time or so is when we play it on that live show, Craig. But on days like today, brother, it's a bonus treat because I get to have you on with me for the whole segment, so a lot of fun.
This is Christmas come early, isn't it?
It sure is, man. Oh, it sure is. Thanks so much, brother. Craig, I appreciate you, man. I'm looking forward to doing it again next time.
That sounds great. Have a wonderful day,
Yep,
guys.
you too, brother.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, folks, 610-363-1110 is our number to call in. We're coming up on a break here, but got a lot more to get to on financial issues. Hopefully to get to some of your partner questions. A couple news headlines I wanted to hit as well before we sign off on today's program. Hey, I want to give you a quick reminder as well. We're coming to the end of our preborn campaign. We've done a great job, folks. We've underwritten over 35 ultrasound machines, well on our way to that 50 machine goal, but we only have a couple days left. So if you haven't given to that wonderful ministry of preborn yet, consider doing that right now by going to financialissues.org and clicking the preborn banner. We'll be right back after this break. Throughout the month of May, FISM is partnering with Preborn to fund the light by providing 100 ultrasound machines to pro-life centers around the country. Now, how can you contribute? Well, for as little as $28, you can provide an ultrasound scan to an abortion-minded woman in crisis. And when that woman hears the heartbeat of her baby, she will choose life, get this, 90% of the time. It's remarkable. And guess what? With the help of a donor match, for every 200 scans donated, that's for a net value of $5,600, Preborn Ministries will be gifted an ultrasound machine to place at a clinic in need. Each machine has the potential to impact hundreds of thousands of mothers' choices. Preborn also offers additional support to mothers in need and presents the gospel to every mother who comes into their clinics, knowing that salvation is the greatest gift that can be given to a mother and her child. So go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM. What can you tell our listeners about the benefits of being a partner?
If you can listen every day, that's great. If you can't, the partner conference calls are a great second option to that. Re-listening through the phone app also is really good. I started listening probably in 2016 or so, giving the big picture, breaking it down. Nobody else did that. Financial stewardship that didn't involve greed. That's what I was looking for. So that was the blessing. For me personally, it's blessed me with an opportunity to help further the kingdom in a small way, which matters a lot because God takes small things and makes them big. The blessing really has been to be able to take care of my family, but also take care of the kingdom. Going to bed knowing that not only are you correctly managing your investments, but you're doing it in a God-honoring way.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
610-363-1110, number to call in here, folks. I'm here with you to the end of the hour, 610-363-1110. Right before the end of that break there, we were talking about our preborn campaign. I just want to thank you all so much. Boy, so many of you have given so generously, and it is looking very likely like we're going to exceed last year's amount. Last year, I think we raised somewhere around $290,000, and it's looking very likely that we're actually going to surpass that, which is just amazing. So thank you all so much for your generous hearts and saving babies and blessing our ministry and blessing preborn. We were talking, I think Shana and I were talking about this on the program, recently in the last couple days, and just talking about how this is such a special campaign that we do every year, because it really is not just a double gift, it's kind of a triple gift in a way, because when you give to preborn, they receive a financial donation to keep their business going, to keep the lights on. But then also when you give to them and we hit that $5,600 threshold, then an ultrasound machine gets underwritten. So that's kind of the second level of it. This generous donor underwrites that and essentially gives it to preborn at a super discount. And then finally, to top it all off, the total goal is given back to Financial Issues so we can continue doing what we're doing to fund the light and to defund darkness. So it really is an amazing thing. If you're looking for, maybe you're in a situation where you can't give a lot, but if you give just a little bit, that small gift actually gets multiplied. And that's what the Lord does for us so often, is he takes our little efforts and he makes them great. So I just appreciate you all so much. We did see some good news actually recently. There was a report came out from the Charlotte Lozier Institute, said in 2022, almost 3,000 pregnancy help centers in the U.S. provided nearly $370 million worth of pregnancy services and material goods to clients in the year 2022. So that includes $176 million in medical services, more than $113 million in free education, nearly $80 million worth of material goods and other resource items. Folks, it takes money, obviously, to fund darkness. We see that with Planned Parenthood and other organizations that are actively trying to push a godless agenda. So it also takes money to defund darkness and to fund the light. And we're seeing that here. And, Preborn is on the front lines of even this headline right here, one of the preeminent pregnancy centers in the country. So when you give to this campaign, you're helping pushing back against this darkness. And God's going to bless you for it. He's going to be very pleased with that. So great job to all of you. Let's keep it moving. I did want to remind you as well, if you are going to give to the campaign, make sure the best way to do it is to go to financialissues.org and click the Preborn banner. That just makes sure that your gift gets caught in the net of this particular campaign. It's great to give to Preborn anyway, but we're specifically pushing for this campaign here. And so if you feel more comfortable calling Preborn, that's fine. You just have to make sure that you tell them this is specifically for the Financial Issues May Mother's Day campaign. That can be a little more cumbersome. So if you go to financialissues.org and you click that Preborn banner at the top right-hand side of the page, big banner takes up over half of the screen. That's the best way to give, most easy way to do that. So make sure that you do that now. I did drop that link in the chat as well if you're watching on the website. A couple of headlines I wanted to get to here, folks, before we sign off. Home prices hit another record high in March. The S&P Case-Shiller 20-City House Index rose 0.3% in March compared to the previous month. That was driven by continually, persistently low inventories, of course. Home prices in these 20 major U.S. metro markets, include cities like San Francisco and Dallas, I believe, and some other places, surged over 7% in the last 12 months. Slight uptick from the 7.3% increase. It actually hit 7.4% increase during the last 12 months. The national index rose 0.3% in March and 6.5% year over year. And these numbers are all seasonally adjusted. Also, speaking of rising prices here, did anybody feel like during your Memorial Day picnic you had just spent a little too much money on burgers and dogs and barbecues? Well, you can thank Bidenflation for that, Bidenomics, unfortunately. It turns out prices for Memorial Day this year jumped more than 10%, according to a recent report. So Americans shelled out over $30 more for their burgers, buns, condiments than they did in 2023. That's about a 10.19% overall price increase. Some of these numbers here, burgers went up from $7.04 last year to $8.07 this year. Cost of buns ticked up slightly. A bottle of ketchup rose 10 cents. Mustard went up about 8 cents. And then pickle relish, this was a big jump, went up about $1.50 from last year. Nothing is safe from the reach of Bidenomics, it seems, not even your summer cookouts, sadly. Well, as Shana mentioned at the top of the show, folks, we did have a stewardship verse I'd like to get to here. Leviticus 25, verse 36 says, "Take no interest from him or profit, but fear your God that your brother may live beside you." This verse commands the people of God to not force their countrymen to pay them back with interest. And the heart behind this, obviously, is one of generosity and grace. So Shana had mentioned at the top of the show some of the pros and cons of credit and buying things on credit and different things like that. I would urge you, take a listen to yesterday's show. Most of the show, Shana and I talked through the idea of debt. And this concept of credit and debt are actually very, very similar in many ways. Similarly to what we talked about yesterday, buying things via credit can be dangerous, not necessarily in and of itself, but because it's a one-way ticket into debt. And the danger, just like Shana said with debt yesterday, is not necessarily with the act of buying something on credit, but it's with not counting the cost. And it's with buying things that you actually can't afford. So there's wise ways to make purchases via credit. I'd say small purchases you can pay back immediately, of course. And then there's also those long-term things. We talked about this yesterday, buying a home or unforeseen medical emergencies. Sometimes you're in a situation where you're forced to do that. Obviously, if you have to go into debt to save the life of your child, for instance, of course you will do that. But it's about using wisdom, folks. That's really the key here. I think so many people are tempted to use credit to make foolish purchases because they want what they cannot have. We talked about all this on yesterday's show, so I'd encourage you to take a listen to it when you get the chance and be reminded that biblically responsible investing is not just about keeping your investment dollars pure, but it's also about managing your money in a way that honors God in a wise way. That's all involved in biblically responsible investing. So we got a good question that came in up on the chat here. I promised that I would address this. Eddie from Tennessee was asking, how does cryptocurrency fit into our BRI strategy, or does it at all? Eddie, it's a good question, and we get this one rather frequently. We treat cryptocurrency very cautiously. There's nothing, to my understanding, there's nothing in cryptocurrency in and of itself that would cause the currency itself to be non-BRI in the same way that the US dollar is, in the same way that gold is, different things like that. But again, it's about using wisdom. Cryptocurrency is still, there's not a whole lot of research on how safe it is. It's untraceable. Oftentimes, it's the currency that's used by criminals, and it's used by crooks and pimps and prostitutes and terrorists. So we tell people, be careful with it and try to stay away from it if you can. Again, it's not morally wrong to invest in it, but it's something that we think you should be very, very careful with. So we don't promote cryptocurrency at our ministry. We believe that there are much better ways to be able to grow your investments long term. Part of the danger of cryptocurrency also, folks, is that it kind of does have a bit of that get rich quick mentality to it. And we are not about that. We wouldn't tell you to touch that with a 30-foot pole. Long-term, little by little growth is at the core of our ministry. That's really one of the heartbeats of biblically responsible investing, is that we believe that wealth grown little by little will increase, versus wealth gained hastily or wealth gained in an illicit manner is wealth that will dwindle. So get rich quick schemes, we believe, are not biblical. And not all cryptocurrency is that, but a lot of it is, truthfully. So it's a question of wisdom, to be sure, but we really feel like it's not part of our strategy. We don't encourage our listeners to invest in cryptocurrency. We'd much rather you invest in companies that are using shareholder dollars simply to make a profit. They're not getting involved in the culture war. They're not doing evil things with their money. They're not funding abortions. They're not funding the LGBTQ agenda. Having that well spread out, well diversified, and growing wealth little by little, that's how you'll do really well. So I hope that helps there, Eddie. That's a good question. Hey, Grant, let's get to one of these partner questions here before we sign off, at least. I think we have time for one.
All right.
Yep.
We have a question from Teddy. Yeah. I called last week about TE91. Since it's not on the buy list, should I sell it or just keep it?
Good question, Teddy. Thanks for that question. Just a reminder, when a stock goes off the buy list, it does not mean it's a sell. If it goes off the buy list, what happens is if you already have it, that means you hold it, you continue to hold it. If it's growing, that's great. You watch it grow. If it's an income-producing stock, you're paid to wait. You enjoy the income. And for those who don't have it, it means that you should not buy it. That's all it means. It does not mean it's a sell. TE91, as you probably know, Teddy, it's shot up like a rocket in the last few months, and especially so, honestly, in this last week even. We took it off the buy list several months ago expecting this and kind of seeing the trend here. The stock has become quite expensive, so it is a long-term hold right now for those who are holding it. Like Teddy, if you're in Teddy's situation, Teddy, just keep on holding it. Let that thing ride, man. I will say this also, Shana had mentioned this recently as well, that we are looking into some curious things about possible BRI violations with this particular company, but it's nothing to worry about for any who are holding it right now. We're going to update you if our investigation leads to anything. So far, it has not. So far, it is still continues to be a long-term hold for you. Until you hear anything from us, let it ride, hold on to it. It is not on the buy list right now, but again, that doesn't mean that you should sell it. It just means if you have it, let it ride, watch it, hold it, hang on to it. And if you don't have it, then don't buy it because it's not on the buy list. So I hope that makes sense there, Teddy. That's a good one. Don't think we have time to get to Robert's question here. So, man, folks, I just appreciate you all so much listening to the show once again today. Lord willing, we're going to do it again tomorrow. Got a comment here from Gary saying my typical grocery bill is now around $125. Before Biden's inflation, it was approximately $95. Gary, I feel you there, man. It is brutal seeing those grocery prices going up and up with Bidenomics, sadly. Folks, a reminder, please do consider giving to Preborn for our end of the year campaign. I did put that into the chat there. Thank you all so much for giving. We got a great show planned for tomorrow. I hope you'll join us then. Until then, remember, everything that you have belongs to the Lord. It's all His. So let's be found good and faithful stewards with it. Biblically responsible investing is not necessarily easy all the time, but it is very simple. And so if you follow our simple strategy, we believe you'll do a great job. Ultimately, we believe that you'll be honoring to God. Thank you all so much, folks. It was great to be here with you, and God willing, we'll do it again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Seth Udinsky. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.